because this has been a hell of a year, 2017, for platformers, and we haven't really talked about it or connected the dots. But you look through and it's like, oh, this is the year, fans of the genre, in theory, have been waiting for. It's an amazing year. So many games out, so we're going to talk about 2017 a little bit, the difficulties of designing a great platformer. We're not that smart. The four of us combined, even Tim with his publisher knowledge now, knowing everything behind the scenes of Capcom, we still need some extra oomph to bring this over the top to make this a great weekend holiday break episode of the GI Show. So we have also on the line Jonas Kærlev from Gears for Breakfast, who is the director for A Hat in Time. Welcome, Jonas.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
where's that voice coming from?
Disembodied voice, the way we always wanted to have you. So you're actually calling from Denmark now?
Yeah, that's correct.
And that's where the studio's based?
Yes.
Fantastic. So, Kyle, you reviewed A Hat in Time. We talked about it on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Jonas, you made a good game.
We discovered it.
Congratulations.
Sure.
We were the first people on the internet to play
it. I think Kyle did like the game a fair amount.
Yeah.
But everything was overwhelmed. Every discussion about this game was consumed by the name. A Hat in Time. Is it a pun that we're not exactly hitting, or what is that name about?
It's a pun on a Stitch in Time because, she stitches hats.
Okay.
You called it.
That was among our guesses. The other one was it was a pun on maybe Back in Time, which in retrospect now doesn't make sense because the title has the word A at the beginning.
It made me think of a crack in Time.
It's just a Stitch in Time.
Yeah, it made me think of Ratchet and Clank. It's got everything fused into one title, but it's out now on PS4, also Xbox One, Jonas?
Yep, that's correct, and PC.
And coming to Switch?
Nah.
No.
There's no market there.
Tried to get a nice scoop there. Didn't work.
Never go for a scoop. Jonas, since we're talking about platformers, I'm curious your take on the genre. What games in particular made you fall in love with platformers and realize that you wanted to devote your life to making some?
Oh, it's definitely Mario Sunshine and Psychonauts are definitely the big two ones.
Wow. Are you a younger guy, Jonas?
Well, I'm in my 20s, so...
All right, that's impressive.
You consider that
Child.
young.
I love
the sunshine love, no pun intended, warms my heart. Like, honestly, it feels really good to hear that.
Let me spray that.
Yeah.
It's also just nice to hear people not just say Super Mario World, go for the classics. Even Super Mario 64, that's some pretty new age stuff there. But to go for Sunshine, what about that game captured your imagination, Jonas?
Well, I mean, I started out playing like Mario and then Mario World and such. I've played them all, but I don't know. There's something about Sunshine where it has a lot of like atmosphere. Like you actually feel like you're in a very different place. And even it might, there's a risk of it feeling monotone because of that, but it actually feels like a cohesive place that you really want to spend your time in. And that's just super cool. Like, it's not just you being in a random place. It's like the environment like kind of soaks you in and you're part of the environment now.
And it just has like such a distinct flavor. It's so nice for a game to have a distinct flavor when you look back on it, just to remember a certain tone. Where like Odyssey, as great as the game is, it's like, I guess if I had to come up with a defining flavor, it is Metro Kingdom. It's like, it's so nice just to have one vision for that thing, and then everything branches off of that.
No one does beaches quite like Nintendo. Like the Mario Sunshine, like the whole resort aesthetic that they nailed.
Yeah.
With like the music and the like the weirdo like people there that they have, like the weird. I don't know.
Give them their dignity.
I can't remember what they're called. I can't remember what they're
Christ.
called. But then and then you take Odyssey's beach level. I can't remember. It's not Lake Kingdom. It's like, is it just Resort Kingdom? I can't remember. But it's basically like the Sunshine level where you have like the squids and you can propel around like that. That's one of my like. It's just fun and relaxing to play in that level because it feels like you're in a resort.
Do you ever play Dead or Alive beach volleyball?
Wow.
It's pretty much the same thing.
Is it the same tone?
It's pretty derivative.
There's the beach in Link's Awakening where you get the sword. I feel like we could do top 10 Nintendo beaches in the magazine.
Wave race.
But Jonas mentioned Psychonauts as
yeah,
well.
that's an interesting choice, Jonas. Why that one?
Yeah, Psychonauts is very, very underrated. It's like a super funny game. Like, it really made me fall in love with just like the fact that humor can be part of a game. And it's the different scenarios you put in. Like at one time you're in like this milkman conspiracy and like your world is upside down, and suddenly you're like a T-Rex storming through a city. It's so varied and so crazy that you really just, you're used to in like Mario games are great, right? But you're used to the fact that the thing stays the same, right? You jump and you platform and you do different things. But Psychonauts was the first time where I actually experienced that the gameplay like changed significantly. And that was so interesting and creative. I've never seen anything like that before, and it really just made me fall in love with the game.
Yeah, it's fun too, just being a fan of Double Fine and the videos that kind of lead you behind the scenes from Two Player Productions recently. It's interesting hearing that team reflect on Psychonauts development as well, because it seemed to be the overriding sentiment was we just didn't know when to limit ourselves. We didn't know how much variety to pack in because it was the studio's first game. And then it ends up when they just swing for the fences and just say, well, I guess it's going to be constant variety that the game becomes a classic in retrospect, even if it's a monster to make.
I feel one element that people don't talk about a lot of that game is, at least for me, I also thought the game was really moving because it is about going into other people's minds and kind of learning their secrets. And it's really kind of sweet and dark. And I remember the ending in particular, like, really kind of surprising me. I was like, oh, I thought I was just in for a fun time and a bunch of jokes, but like this is about a guy like coming to term with like a difficult relationship with his father, and stuff. It's really great.
And the Milkman is really up there with Senua, I think, for just like difficult mental situations in gaming overall. Tim, what do you see as like the key ingredients to a great platformer?
Man, like now that you mentioned it, like variety to me seems pretty huge.
Yeah.
And it boils down to like just the essence of like what early games were. Where like, here's your ice level, here's your fire level, here's your spooky level, here's like the green, here's the air level, water level. Like it's all so elemental, and that lends itself to both like gameplay variety, like don't touch the lava and swim underwater, but also just the aesthetic and the general vibe of it. So I'd say variety is huge. I mean, and that's just taking for granted that the game is like controls well. Like Jonas, I thought that Hat in Time, like I played it as well, it's one of those games where I feel like you so don't have to think about how you're interacting with the game in a way that like the controls are just tight, like they're just really responsive, and it plays well, so you can just focus on everything else. So mechanically it needs to be really sound.
Yeah. Jonas, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like the Beastcast podcast has a running joke I always appreciate of like, how's the running around?
Yeah.
And Kyle, you mentioned that as one of the first things with Hat in Time is like the running around feels good.
Yeah.
Jonas, how difficult is that? Do people take it for granted just when a game feels good in a 3D platformer?
Well, it's definitely like something you evolve over time. Like, I'm really glad you guys didn't try like early versions of A Hat in Time because it's a very different, like, a moving game. But yeah, it's just a lot of iteration and making sure that like, because you might think like oh, like games should have like a wall slide and double jump, right? But what we did for A Hat in Time is that we thought, okay, well, why is that the wall slide works as it does, right? And that's something Mario games have done as well. Like if you look at Mario 64, if you jump at a wall, Mario just bounces off, right? You have to press it with precise timing. In Sunshine, they changed that where you slide down a wall for the first time. So that's an evolution of a mechanic. And then for A Hat in Time, we thought, okay, well, why does he slide down? Why can't he slide up? And that's why HeadKit can like sort of like semi-climb walls, which feels really good because if you just barely miss a jump, you get like an extra leeway. So it's really just a lot about like questioning what has been done before, why is it like this, and does it have to be like this? And so it's a lot of iterating and going over the things you've already like implemented and making sure that can this be done differently or can this be done in another way. So it's really is just a lot of like trial and error and figuring out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. Is it as literal as you guys when you started the project for Hat in Time, just sitting down and going back to Psychonauts, going back to Sunshine and some of the classics and just taking notes on how specifically they're doing everything?
No, we're in our company, we try things out first. Like we don't think about them, we just try them, right? Throw everything at a wall and see what sticks, basically. And we did that for HeadKit's movement as well. Like she had a lot of different moves that aren't in the game now just because they feel poor or they didn't connect with other moves as well. So I definitely feel like experimentation is the best way to like get a feel for what feels good, right? Because you can only feel if it feels good by actually playing it.
Yeah. Well, what was the decision to go for a 3D platformer? What do you feel like that offers that a 2D platformer doesn't?
It was very simple. It's because at the time when I started Hat in Time, Mario games were moving into sort of like the Mario Galaxy, right? So that means semi-linear stages and, you know, very like, it's very tight and very like well designed, but very linear. And I wanted something similar more to like Psychonauts and Sunshine, but nothing was being made at the time. So I really thought, okay, well, let me try making something like this. And it just so happened that the same year I decided to do that, like Mario Odyssey comes out and Yooka-Laylee comes out and all these different games comes out. So apparently I wasn't the only one feeling like this.
Wait, how long were you working on this?
I've been working on it for 4 years. So we started in 2013. We actually started the same year as Mario Odyssey started its development.
It was a real race to the finish line. I understand.
So I think that's really cool that it's a good point because like, yeah, Mario Galaxy, like you mentioned, you know, it had that more classic Mario structure where you'd hop in, you'd go to get your, you know, your star, and then but it was more or less a linear path. You knew what you were after, and Sunshine was a little bit more open-ended. But actually, my experience with Hat in Time was I started listening to the soundtrack on YouTube, like during work, and it gave me more of like a Galaxy vibe. Like it's just this really like wondrous, like kind of, I don't know, like it was just really epic, I guess I would say.
Space.
Yeah, spacey, a little bit like that. But that mixed with that sort of more open sunshine formula, I feel like worked out really well. But no, it's a good point. Yeah, Galaxy was a little linear, but up until now, I've like considered it the best 3D platformer. I need more space from Odyssey and stuff this year to kind of really think about it. But
yeah, it is interesting to think of Nintendo in particular, maybe this year, also going back to that kind of Mario 64 structure, a more freeform version of it. But why do you think that format of going into a level on a specific mission works so well, Jonas?
Well, it's because you get to experience a level in a different way. So in both Mario Sunshine, well, let me start with Mario Sunshine actually. There's a mission in that level where it's just, it's a village up in the tree and you move around and you get a star, like easy, right? But then suddenly they changed it up and now the entire floor is like filled with this very deadly acid. And if you touch it, you die. So it's literally like the floor is lava, right? And I thought that was so cool because now you get to experience this level. It's been safe before, but now you experience it in a completely different way. And so we took that concept for a hat in time and just maxed it out, right? So we literally have a giant town and suddenly it also becomes lava. Like, I wonder where we got that from, right?
Yeah.
But it really is just fun to experience levels you've tried before in a new and different light. And it makes them feel much more dynamic, like you're part of them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, now it's daytime, now it's night, now it's lava.
That's really cool that you mentioned that, because it's one of my favorite things that Yooka-Laylee does, is where you can use the pages to either like open up new worlds or you can expand like what's already there, and there'll be new pathways that open up, which is like I think that's a really cool thing that 3D platformers can do in a way that 2D platformers it would be harder to do with.
What did you guys think about Yooka-Laylee's reception this year? It seemed like there was a lot of hype going into it, and I played, I don't know, hour and a half of it or so and thought like, okay, this is about what I remember from those N64 platformers. Seems all right. How do you feel like overall it was received?
It hits the thing that, or it missed the thing that I look for in platformers, and that's pacing. And I think Mario Odyssey did it very well in that you're just constantly making discoveries. Whereas Yooka-Laylee, I felt like I was kind of aimless for a while, and I started to get bored by it. And that reminded me of like Donkey Kong 64, where that kind of failed, where it didn't have that instant discovery of like Banjo-Kazooie, right? Like very similar in design, but that one had better pacing.
So just pacing as clear as, an indicator on the screen if you need it, just showing you exactly where to go.
Just the jump challenges, like anything like that. Like it didn't, that game fell into repetition very quickly for me and didn't really give me that sense of discovery like the good platformers do.
Yeah. Jonas, did you play Yooka-Laylee by chance?
I did, yeah.
What'd you think?
I think Yooka-Laylee delivers on what it promised to deliver, which is it wanted to be Banjo-free, and it is literally like Banjo-free. If you copied Banjo Turi and made a sequel, it would be like literally Yooka-Laylee. But it's not actually there's a difference between what people say they want, right? I might say I want Mario Sunshine 2, but I don't actually want like a carbon copy of Mario Sunshine with a 2 strapped on. Because everyone wants an evolution of the genre. They want an evolution of what they've already experienced. And if you don't stop and ask, why do we have this thing here, right? If your only answer to that is, it's because it was in the prequel, you might be doing something wrong. Like, you should always question, why is it here? Does players actually enjoy this? And can we improve this in any way? And so Yooka-Laylee is a success in that it provides people with exactly what they promised, but what they promised isn't exactly necessarily what people want, which is unfortunate. Yeah,
Tim, I mean, I know you've just played a little bit so far, but as a huge fan of those old Rare games, do you feel like it's nostalgia, or are you starting to see the limits of your nostalgia playing Yooka-Laylee?
There's something that I realized. I used to have like a debate with like Dan Reichert and like a few other people here that like I'm a huge Banjo-Kazooie fan, and I loved Mario 64, and I used to like really maintain that Banjo-Kazooie is the better game. They are like comparing two of my favorite things, but I think that 64 kind of edged it out. It's like, choosing your favorite kid. Like they're both incredible, but I realized in that
one's just not as good.
Yeah,
I go to them for very different things, and I think that Jonas was hitting on this a little bit, where like it's the sort of like there's a different type of whimsy. There's a sort of like a middle school like sense of humor to some of the Rare stuff, where you might find like a poop and fart joke in there.
Trouser snake, everybody.
Yeah, squeaked in there, and there's something charming to that, or the Rare speak, and also the mobility. I love the because it's just the dynamic of like having two characters. So I get that like Yooka-Laylee is one character, right? That has two different, you know, creatures sort of animated on it. But like the whole feeling of like hopping on, you know, Yuka as Laylee like rides him like around like kind of like a, you know, like a barrel or something like that, is it feels really good. But it's just going to him for different things. Like we got 2 really good Grant Kirkhope soundtracks this year, which I'm really excited about.
That is true.
But it's still a little early for me. It is scratching that like Banjo-Kazooie itch so far, but it's still really early. I still have a lot of pages to get.
Yeah. Jonas, is it tough to release a platformer 2017 because everyone just makes the Mario Odyssey comparison?
Well, I'm glad we released before Mario Odyssey. But yeah, I've noticed that like for a lot of the reviews that arrived after Mario Odyssey, like everyone's mentioning Mario Odyssey, which is like, you know, you kind of want to stand on your own, but it's also, you know, you're in the shadow of a very much larger studio, so there's nothing you can do about that. But a lot of people have like said that A Hat in Time is able to stand like on its own. Like it isn't just like a Mario platformer, it isn't just like Banjo. It's just like its own thing, which I'm really happy to hear because, you know, we really feel like we put our soul into this and try to make it unique and nothing like else there's been before. So I'm happy we've hit that mark.
And it's,
but yeah, it's funny how Yooka-Laylee and Mario Odyssey are actually very similar games. Like how you use pages to expand the world, you do that literally in Mario Odyssey. Like in Steam Gardens, you go up a part and then, you know, larger parts of the levels unlock. So they're very similar games in a way, but it's weird how the reception has been so different to the two of them.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I mean, you talk about going back and looking at other platformers and dissecting how they do everything. When you play Super Mario Odyssey, are you struck by anything in particular? Like, what does the developer see when playing that game that's so much harder to nail than you think like the average consumer sees?
I think the movement is really interesting. I feel like it has. So normally in Mario, the movement has a very low barrier to entry, right? Because they want everyone to be able to play. But in Mario Odyssey, you can do that weird thing where you throw your hat and then dive and then throw your hat again and then, you know, reach an insane distance, which is very difficult to pull off. So it has a very high skill ceiling. I think that's the first time I've ever seen Nintendo do that. So that's super interesting. It might be that they're trying to like expand their audience back to like semi-hardcore gamers, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they've hit it out of the park, at least sales-wise, with the new Super Mario Brothers series, and then maybe 3D Land and 3D World's kind of a reaction towards that. And it's a bold, awesome move for them to kind of shed off that kind of core multiplayer component and to go back for, no, we're feeling confident that we can take that 64 formula and there's that fan base ready to go.
Though I will defend the pseudo co-op of Odyssey. I know it's fun. It gets varying. Are you playing it as well?
My daughter loves throwing the hat. Yeah.
How is her Cappy game? How is she
Not
doing?
very good.
No, because it's important.
She says otherwise.
Okay,
but the nice thing about it doesn't really interrupt you, though. Like,
correct.
Which is nice about it.
But a good Cappy on your side, man, boy howdy. It's you can like reach coins that you couldn't get otherwise, and like it was a fun experience. It was definitely more satisfying than like the Mario Galaxy. You know, collect some star bits for me or interrupt an enemy.
Yeah. Reiner, as someone who's been in the industry since 1983, I mean, do you think 2017 is extremely notable for the platformers released this year? Have you felt the impact?
No. I would say it's like any other year. It hasn't been like an explosion that like revitalized it or anything like that. Like everybody wanted Yooka-Laylee back and that was significant, but I feel it's just another year capped by another great Mario, no pun intended.
Does it just feel like it, maybe from my perspective or some other people's perspective, just because of like the crazy revivals, just the idea that we got kind of sort of a new Crash Bandicoot this year. I know saying new is tough because it's a full remake and all that, but then that combined with finally Sonic fans are forced to permanently shut the F up, I believe, with Sonic Mania. I feel like there have been so many crazy Hail Marys, and every year
it's kind of like the old dogs are coming back, right? Like, but if Crash would have been a new game, that would have been a different story.
Yeah.
But for it to just be like remakes of all three of them, I don't know. I didn't think that was that big of a story this year.
Yeah.
But you get one good Sonic, one bad Sonic, right?
So it just therefore it nullifies itself and we shouldn't talk about Sonic? Is that the idea?
I mean, it just seemed kind of typical to me in terms of, again, Mario stands out on top though, right? Like,
I guess for me, it just felt like it's been a while, just generally, that I've played a game where I've been just dropped into 3D space and can walk around and collect things. Like, that is a type of game that I haven't played in a while, and there were 3 big ones this year, I think, between Mario and Yooka-Laylee and Hat in Time.
Yeah.
So to me, it does feel like there was a bit of a 3D platformer research, but 2D platformer, I feel like has stayed pretty consistent.
Yeah, and the last like big revelation for me in platformers was like Super Meat Boy, stuff like that.
man.
When those were coming online, that's where I was like, whoa.
And we did get
There's new stuff going on in this genre.
And we did get Ed McMillan's new kind of spiritual successor, I feel like.
Yeah.
To that.
End is Nigh.
End is Nigh.
Which is another one that I feel like with that pedigree, people didn't really talk about it that much.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. Did you play it?
Yeah, I did play a good chunk of it. It's really fun. It's really like the pacing is totally different. Where like for me, like Super Meat Boy was just like constantly holding down the run button and trying to just fly through and find the purest path through a level. This one definitely was a little more exploration focused. It was screen to screen, less these bite-sized little levels. So the pacing was a little bit different. But I really like the aesthetic, like that Binding of Isaac kind of Super Meat Boy, where it's like a cutesy but kind of grim world. I liked. I need to get back to it because I mean. It's a great platforming game where it's like every mistake is purely your own and you know what to do better.
That just came to Switch, right? I think.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I actually we had a copy in the office that I took home over the break to play, so
nice.
I'll be playing it soon.
That'd be a good Switch game.
Tim, I feel like it's a shame we haven't heard your thoughts on Sonic Mania yet.
Oh yeah, man, that's like way up there. I haven't built out my top 10 of the year, but I think that Sonic Mania is like top 3 for me.
Oh, wow.
I played the hell out of it. Like the soundtrack was incredible. I got like all the Chaos Emeralds with all the characters, etc. Like for me, one of the moments of the year was like the boss for Act 2 of Chemical Plant Zone, where like every kid has gone to a Blockbuster at some point in their history and rented Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine because they saw Dr. Robotnik on it and they're like, what is this weird puzzle game? And then they didn't know, and they learned early on that Puyo Puyo was actually incredible. And then you just get like slammed with that crazy reference in a Puyo Puyo boss fight in Sonic Mania. But other than that, like it's just like I love the balance between new and like remixes of old, and like it was one of the most validating gaming experiences for me recently, just that came out. Soundtrack by T. Lopes was incredible. It was just
Everything Sonic fans should watch.
I mean, there's things like like Mega Man series has this, for example, or Resident Evil, where like that series, Sonic has been around for so long, and there's 2 like really distinct jumping on points where there's like the early 90s with the side scrollers, and then there's this Dreamcast era with Adventure and everything that came after that. And so there's this clear distinction between these lines. But for those people that grew up with the classic side scrollers in like the 16-bit era, they all seem to love it. We all love that game, and I hope that it for fans of the later series of the 3D Sonic games, I hope that they were able to see like what made those classic games so great. But yeah, I loved it.
What does the Sega or the Sonic team in particular do now that Sonic Mania hit that chord with fans? Like, do they just make Sonic Mania 2 and just keep doing
absolutely.
this?
They have to.
It's just
they
that
can't
simple?
do anything else.
I would love more of that. I would love more remix levels, but I at the same time, like having met like I was at San Diego Comic-Con when they announced that and got to talk to like Christian and stuff a little bit, and like
The designer Christian Whitehead.
yes, they know the game so well. I just want them to have the time and resources to make like a brand new Sonic game. Like I like the remix stuff; it's really cool. But a full, like they've proved themselves with those new levels so well. I'd love a brand new Sonic game, even if it was just half the length,
Yeah.
Like, I think the game's fun, but I think for me, maybe the reason it's not hitting so much is as you were talking, I just started remembering like Sonic 4, like all these like kind of false starts that were kind of good but not great, and it just seemed like it was like yearly, like one after another. Like, oh, here's a new one. This is going to be it. Nope, it wasn't it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why it's not like hitting like a home run, because it hasn't gone away. It was just like an engine that just kept revving, right?
Yeah.
I think it loops back to something we were talking about before, where like you don't have to think about the controls, where like Mania just feels like the classic games did, but I think they do that little magic thing where it's just like it feels like you remember it, and there's a little bit of smoothing, and like the drop dash is like a cool little extra mechanic. Or when you're playing as like Sonic and Tails at the same time, usually you needed like a co-op partner to have a controller to fly you up somewhere, and now you can just press up and jump, like double jump as Sonic and control Tails suddenly. And so there's these little tweaks to it, but I think that unlike some of those other side-scrolling Sonic games, I think this one definitely controls the best.
Jonas, you don't need to crap all over him, but I'm curious, do you ever look at the 3D Sonic games, maybe Sonic Forces in particular, to see what that team's getting right and getting wrong?
I really like the boost games, like the Sonic Boost games, like Generations and Unleashed and such. So those are really like, because there's nothing really like them on the market. Like they're borderline racing games, but they're also borderline platformers, which is really interesting. But yeah, no, we haven't really looked at them as part of like our reference for a Hat in Time or anything. But yeah, like I really love the boost games, and it's such a shame that in like Unleashed and Forces that the boost mechanics are actually a very minor part of it. Like there's like, I think in Sonic Forces there's like 7 boost games, like boost levels, and the rest is either 2D or something else. I wish they would just make like one big boost game. That would be fantastic.
Am I stupid? What boost game?
It's the mechanic of like, you know, it's like Sonic Colors had a lot of the boosting mechanic where you could just get like an extra burst of speed and just really fly through a level. And then they also had like the homing attack. Is that what you're referencing, Jonas?
Yeah. There's a specific gameplay style where Sonic is in 3D and you press a specific button to boost, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's borderline on rails, but borderline a racing game and also a platformer, and it's really neat. Like I think they really nailed it down in Sonic Generations, and it's such a shame that it's like taking a backseat now, and instead they're going for like classic Sonic and you know the new guy in Sonic Forces, whatever his name is. That like gameplay instead of just focusing on the boost mechanic.
Huh. Did you ever play Sonic Colors DS, the Dimps developed one?
No, I didn't play DS.
It was a good mix of like the 3D boost mechanic meeting like classic side scrolling. You might like it. I don't know.
Reiner, what do you want from the future of the whole genre? Maybe 2018 specifically.
Oh man. I think games like Jak and Daxter that kind of teased open world were interesting to me, and like Mario Odyssey as well, like some of the larger zones seem like there's a lot more potential, maybe expanding the scope
or even interconnecting those like in real time as opposed to jumping into
but just like I don't want to say just merge Zelda and Mario, but that idea, I don't know, I think that'd be cool. I would like to see more of an open world platforming experience.
Does it just become Prototype or Infamous at a certain point? Like,
yeah, but still that kind of cutesy, you know, like mascot-driven experience.
Super Lucky's Tale. Open world. We forgot.
That's exactly.
I wanted to ask about Super Lucky's Tale. I didn't get a chance.
I played it a little bit, and it's very focused towards like younger players, like a lot. You know what I mean? Like simplified platforming challenges, too cute for its own good, maybe even.
Too cute to live, says Kyle.
Like your daughter.
That's what I'm getting at.
She's adorable.
Oh, okay. All right.
Are you saying that my daughter's too cute to live? Is that what just happened?
That's the second segment.
That's an email that we're getting.
Jonas, what do you want from the future of the genre, man?
Oh, that's hard to say. I think, you know, a lot of people want more open worlds and large areas. I actually want smaller worlds. Like I want something where you really get to know an environment and then, you know, that environment becomes iconic. Because I can recall from memory a lot of the areas in Mario Sunshine and Mario 64, but Mario Odyssey kind of becomes like a bit of a blur because it's so big. Like obviously not everything can be like an iconic landmark. I just want smaller areas, more focused, and just, you know, get me really familiar with the environment, make me interact with the environment as much as it interacts with me. And I'd be happy. I'd love to play that. Also, Psychonauts 2. Can't wait for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just got bumped out of 2018. So.
2020, man. I'm calling it.
2020? Oh,
no. All right. But, I mean, Jonas, that's really tough to do in my mind, at least. Just thinking about smaller environments, having you get a distinct flavor from an environment, but then also pack in variety. Like, how do you square those two?
You should play Hat in Time.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to write this down.
Well, so that's what I want from a game, right? So obviously that's reflected in the game that I have made. But in Hat in Time, we have this train, right? And this train you visit like multiple times. And the train just like, it's the same train, but it changes completely every time you visit it. Like first, it's like a murder mystery. And you visit again, and it's like falling apart, everything exploding, right? So just the same environment, but just very different. And you get to like really feel like you've connected to a place. So you can look at a place and say, I love that place. Just as much as you can look at a character and say, I love that character. That would be great.
The train mission, Jonas, was really original. It's kind of got like a Murder on the Orient Express mixed with like a stealth sequence a little bit.
Mixed specifically with Metal Gear Solid.
It's really fun. Like just a really good change of. We were talking about pacing in 3D platformers. I think that was like a real refreshing one midstream there.
Yeah. Is there one person on team that's particularly in love with Metal Gear Solid that they threw in that Metal Gear Solid 2 reference there, Jonas?
No, that was actually a reference to the old Macintosh commercials.
Oh
Really,
my
it looked
God!
Like both, so.
Oh, with the sledgehammer and like the
Yeah, because
That's why, because when I got to that section in the office, I was like, "Hey, everyone, look! It's Metal Gear Solid 2."
the scene where like all the soldiers are training
Yeah.
on the tanker.
you had the cooler reference.
Yeah,
like
well,
the
plus you also
old
have
school.
the TV in there that shows like it just looks like the Metal Gear Solid start screen too. So I was like, "Oh, this is the Metal Gear Solid level."
Every Metal Gear.
The dog on the TV was definitely like a Metal Gear reference.
Yeah.
Okay, thank God. All
Oh,
right.
that's so. Yeah, no, the Apple ad totally makes sense. But my first thought was absolutely, oh, this is Metal Gear Solid 2.
Every Metal Gear is modeled after Mac commercials.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Yeah, it's all coming together.
Kojima came out and said that. Yeah.
Said I'm PC. Yeah, I think that's how it works. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. Do you guys want a new Donkey Kong game?
Yes.
Well,
Just for Switch.
As 2D
wait,
as
Donkey
possible?
Kong 64 or like another Donkey Kong Return?
Oh, that's an interesting example. Do
I
you
think
think
a
they could
new franchise. New take on Donkey Kong
that'd be cool.
for Switch.
get them to take off the GD tie?
MMO.
I mean,
Oh yeah, DKMMO.
DKM. I love Returns. I adore both of those games, but I do feel like as much as I would be happy to play a third one, I feel like I got what I wanted from like a
He doesn't
Return
need to
Donkey Kong
return
Country.
a third time.
Yeah, Returns again. Donkey Kong Forever.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Donkey Kong and Robin. I mean, yeah. Are there other big platformer genre or like series that have been dormant for a while? That
Yes.
are
Well,
great?
Crash needs a new one.
Yeah,
I
I
think-
can't think of any other long dormant platformer that could be coming back.
Well,
in
hold on.
2018.
I know what you're teeing up, and I appreciate it. But like, I hope that Crash, the Crash Insane trilogy is building up to a new Crash. Who wouldn't want to see what a fresh take on that would be? But also, I want the same path for Spyro.
Yeah.
Like the 3D Spyro games of just that simple mechanic of like, it was really liberating. You could kind of fly, but it's just like you always want to get to the high ground, and then what's the farthest you can possibly glide, and there's always gems behind that castle rampart or whatever. And I loved that title for that, and I would love more of it, and I'd love to see it just come back.
Knowing nothing, I would put money on. What is that studio called? Not Bizarre.
Insomnia.
No. The Crash remaster team, Vicarious Visions.
Vicarious.
That they
Vicarious.
would just go immediately to the Crash.
Well,
to the Spyro remaster.
The question there
remake.
is, I mean, how does Skylanders play into all that? Because, like, even, like if you watch like the Netflix show, the Skylanders show, it's about Spyro. He is the
Really?
star of that show.
How's
Yeah.
his voice?
It's
Elijah Wood.
no, it's not Elijah Wood. It's Justin,
Bieber.
not Justin Bieber.
McElroy.
The guy from Tusk. What's that guy's name?
Oh, Justin Long.
Justin
The
Long.
Mac from the Mac commercial.
There we go. It all comes together. Yeah, he plays Spyro, and Crash makes an appearance in that show, by the way. as well,
I
which
think
is
that
weird.
there's a world where both of those could exist. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that Skylanders. This is just my opinion is that Skylanders is Skylanders, and Spyro happens to be in it.
Absolutely.
Whereas
yeah.
Spyro the Dragon is his game.
But like, do
Right.
they start over, or do they take like, hey kids who didn't grow up with Spyro, that character from Skylanders? Here's him in his own standalone game,
This is
or
where
is
he
it
came
just
from.
a total reset, total reboot?
I think
If the character's
Skylanders is
enough.
done, right? Like,
that I think right.
as far as games.
Yeah, the show got renewed for another season. I guess the show's really popular. I don't know.
But we didn't get a
Right.
game this year. Like, and that would be Toys for Bob. Vicarious is probably doing Crash, you'd think.
A new Crash, you think?
Yeah.
I mean, if they have the models and stuff, leaning more of that than Spyro. Yeah, also Spyro. Am I nuts? I mean, I feel like enthusiasm kind of trailed by that third one.
I think what happened with Spyro is like we were talking about variety before in platformers, and there was just a ton of variety. Later on, you're playing a lot of different characters, and I
Yeah.
think when I think about Spyro, what I loved is just playing as Spyro. It's not that like a remake couldn't. I think that the remake of the Crash series like really smoothed over some of the edges that hadn't aged as well.
Maybe
and-
not enough of them, but yeah.
That's right. And the Edge to No or Path to Nowhere.
God damn.
Not Edge. But I think there's a possibility to make that stuff even better than it was, and then like build momentum to a new one. I would hope.
Yeah. Something we didn't even think about. Knack 2 was this year as well.
Yeah,
I didn't get to play
that
that.
was a good game. Good co-op game.
That almost feels more like a brawler, though. I mean, was there a lot of jumping challenges in that, or
It's about half and
half?
half.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that totally.
I almost brought up Breath of the Wild because you do more platforming in that game than I think any other Zelda game.
It's the first
Like,
Zelda with a jump.
Exactly.
Well, not per. technically. The first dedicated jump button.
I think the big difference is that you're not like running around collecting things constantly. Like the things that you collect are notoriously hidden, like Koroks and stuff like that. But anyway, I just really like the platforming in that game.
Yeah, Jonas, releasing a platformer this year. I mean, what was your sense of what the audience wanted? What was the main piece of feedback that stuck with you? And did you feel like you understood what people were craving out there from the genre?
Oh, that's hard. I don't think like there's anything specific we caught on to that's like, oh, this is what people want. If I knew, I would have included it. But I think for Hat in Time, we hit a lot of like the right points. Like, because the Hat in Time and Mario Odyssey shares a lot of like eerily like similar details. Like there's a moped in both games. There's like a photo mode in both games. You use your hat in both games. So we must have hit a lot of right chords, I think.
Also, I saw, Jonas, on Steam Workshop, people have added Mario's hat to Hat in Time if you really want to complete the circle.
Oh yeah, we have full modding support, so
it's awesome.
But yeah, it really just was about us making something that we wanted to make, and then just begging, please let people enjoy the same thing as we do. And it turned out that was the case, so that's really good.
Yeah, well done. What you were trying to tee up before, which I think what you were trying to go for was Mega Man 11 is happening next year.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So.
And I think there's a reason that we didn't like, it's interesting. So Mega Man's like very much an action platformer, and like it almost fits in like a similar realm as like something like Cuphead, but we didn't bring up Cuphead during this conversation because shooting is the primary like interaction with that world, and you are jumping across like platforms constantly. There are the platforming levels in Cuphead, and then there's, you know, the boss fights where you're generally platforming all over the place. But Mega Man, like, I think has like a really good mix of really challenging and fair platforming sequences. Like I think of stuff like, you know, Crash Man's level in Mega Man 2 where you're avoiding the lasers and that's all you're doing in that point. And there are those pure platforming challenges, but then there's also just the action of fighting back. And so far, probably from what you guys have seen of Mega Man 11, thanks again for coming and checking it out.
Yeah, we played a hell of a lot of it.
Awesome cover story. There's still that mix of like, you know, I think about that one sequence in the stage that you played where you're kind of like on a conveyor belt and these giant like platforms are falling down. You kind of have to like shoot these obstacles as you're kind of sliding and moving through these. This is harder to describe than it is just to see, but it is just a kind of a pure platforming challenge within that.
Yeah, that was a weird thing being on the cover story for Mega Man 11 and watching Reeves play it for a very long time because it was very tough and all that. And it was just that weird thing of like, what should I be trying to remember here? Since we're not getting footage of this game, like, should I be drawing the stage layouts? Like, what do Mega Man fans want to know about this level other than like, it's tough, there's some surprises, but do you want to know that like, okay, there's this conveyor belt part, and there's one part with spikes, and this guy that the rocket ship cone launches at you. You know, it's like, I don't know how specific to get for those fans.
That's what I always loved about it, and I think that Mega Man 11 is doing it. And Reiner, I think you'll appreciate this, but you remember like in, you know, the Game Informers of the world, and when there was more video game magazines, that you'd see like classic 8-bit Capcom titles, like the side scrollers drawn out, and it would be like, I think like DuckTales and stuff like that, where it'd be like, here's the horizontal part, it goes vertical, it goes this way, that way.
You do the whole every screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And seeing that path of like, wow, I really kind of went up, down, and like all around. 11 still has that. You're just kind of going in any given direction. There's like very vertical parts. And that's part of the thing I think that might not come across immediately when you're just like having kind of a one night or a one day sort of affair.
One night stand with Mega Man 11. Yeah. That's true. But hey, before we let you go, Jonas, I'm curious, what's the state of game development in Denmark? You guys have IO, you have the team that made Inside, Napnock's out there. Are there other big studios we're forgetting about, or how popular is game development in Denmark?
I think you literally mentioned every single game development. Like our scene is extremely small. Like you can count them on a single hand, basically. So because the scene is so small, we all pretty much know each other because we've all pretty much worked for one another at some point. So it's a very tight scene. It's a really cool scene, and you know, I hope that the fact that Danish game development studios are doing so well will inspire more to like create their own studio. Because it is a really cool scene, and there's so many supportive people up here.
How much of a bummer are those Playdead guys?
No, they're actually very fun.
Oh, really?
They're not just dours thinking about their nightmares all the time?
Ripping tails off pigs. That's nice. And you hang out with like the IO team and whatnot?
I haven't. I think the IO team is the only one I haven't seen actually. But I know like people from Knapnog and both Playdead as well. and yeah, they're just cool people. Like they invite each other over to their parties all the time. So
that sounds great. What a lovely country. It's one of the happiest countries on earth. It's always top of that heap when it ranks it.
And Inside came out of there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, some of that comes through in stuff like Hat in Time for sure is super whimsical, but then, also Inside.
Well, everyone has their dark side. I understand.
I forgot, blurred out at like the 11th hour right before the buzzer, Shovel Knight Spectre of Torment came out this year, which also had like wall climbing and like
so good.
Like Spectre Knight could like he
too.
could surf on his scythe over spike pits and stuff like that. Like there was really cool stuff going on. And you talk about what I would want in the future of the genre, and like I just want more from Yacht Club, and I would love to see their sort of like Hat in Time style take on the 3D platforming genre.
They've teased in interviews that they want to make Shovel Knight 64, which would just be an awesome name for a game.
And Shovel Knight's in ukulele, so I feel like they've teased it. And just as a fan, I just want more from that franchise and just that developer in general. So
yeah, absolutely.
And then we have the Knights. What is it? The King. I can't remember the title, but it's the King Knight Shovel Knight content that's coming up.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hey, that's Platformers, everybody. Jonas, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.